Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théières, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma robe à fleurs, sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte.
Now, as promised, I bring in more of our experts. New York Times columnist Michelle Goldberg, Danielle Gibbs-Leger of the Center for American Progress, and John Flannery, prosecutor, back with us. Danielle, in Washington, your view on what we learned today and where we're headed. And I should mention, we're keeping a close eye on the cameras, so we will cut in and out if we get news.
You know, I think today's hearings, for folks who wanted pizzazz, you definitely got a lot of that today. I think the three witnesses from the Democratic side were very compelling in making the case that the president has indeed committed impeachable offenses. And I think they reiterated that over and over again. And what you saw from the Republican questioning was a lot of flailing, a lot of going back to debunked theories about what is happening. And I think it was really overall a positive day for Democrats. Like I said, they made a good case for why the president should be impeached. I think what you also saw from
Let me jump in and ask you. You said going back to theories, conspiracy theories, but also literally going back to Ukraine today. You couldn't script this in a movie.
I don't understand. What is wrong with Rudy Giuliani? How is he actually in Ukraine, possibly doing the criming that we are discussing at this very moment?
Yeah, and let me read it again, because this is the kind of thing where people might say, okay, is that old news? Are you referencing? No, this is new news. This is new action. We showed the photo of him on the way there. I'm reading from the New York Times here. Giuliani facing scrutiny, travels to Europe to interview Ukrainians, meeting in Budapest Tuesday as the report came out with this former Ukrainian prosecutor, Lutsenko. Daniela.
Yeah, it is, again, these folks are so brazen about what they are doing, they don't even feel like they have to hide it at all. And that emanates from the top. And so I think what you also heard today was we are at a very important inflection point. And again, this behavior isn't impeachable. What is? And what message would you send to the next president, be it a Democrat or Republican, if you don't impeach this president over what he has done?
Michelle.
So I thought Jonathan Turley, the Republican witness, his bad faith was, absolutely staggering. The difference between what he said during the Clinton impeachment and what he's saying now, the piece that he wrote in 2014 saying you don't actually need a crime for impeachment. Now he's saying that Trump's actions don't meet the federal statutes for bribery. That said, he kept saying over and over again that he thought there was more facts to be developed and there's more of a case to be made. Again, I think this is a bad faith argument, given that these people have refused their subpoenas and they've obstructed this investigation. But I also sort of think that Democrats should consider taking them up on their offer, right? You want more witnesses, you want more investigation. I think there are more witnesses and more investigation that they could credibly do, particularly since the Senate under Mitch McConnell is not going to run a fair trial. I think they could take a little more time before they turn this over to him. Say you want more witnesses? Let's call Lev Parnas, who apparently is eager to testify and who was in the middle of this whole plot.
To your point, you could take this New York Times report on Giuliani pushing the plot this week and staple it to the back of the intelligence report.
Yeah, absolutely. And find out, the SDNY investigation into Giuliani's two henchmen, they've accumulated a lot of information, a lot of recordings, data that there's currently wrangling over when and if this will be turned over to impeachment investigators. I would like to know a lot more about those Giuliani calls to the Office of Management and Budget, because there is no earthly reason that the president's private lawyer has to be speaking to the Office of Management and Budget. And so I actually think that, if Democrats wanted to, kind of pull back a little bit and draw this out, now they have a perfect excuse to, because it was the Republican witness who was making the case that that's what they should do. Right,
an excuse, or many of them would argue a rationale, given what we're seeing. John, I want to play for you another exchange today, because obviously we're not going to try to do everything that happened, but in high points there were clear exchanges where you saw something that I think Americans could benefit from, whether they're convinced or not. 70 million people watch part of the fact hearings. Now you're in the law hearings. And so you had the facts and the evidence as presented applied by experts, many of these people with tremendous credentials, and saying their view of what the law dictates. Take a look.
When you asked for private benefits in return for an official act, or somebody gave them to you to influence an official act, that was bribery.
And so we have constitutional bribery here, the high crime and misdemeanor of constitutional bribery against President Trump.
If you conclude that he asked for the investigation of Vice President Biden and his son for political reasons, that is to aid his reelection, then yes, you have bribery here.
What did you think of both that exchange specifically, John, and any others that you would point to for viewers, especially at the end of the day, people living their lives didn't see every moment? Is that important? Is that useful? And did you agree with the bulk of the analysis? My ear, and I was covering this as an expert guest as well as an anchor around here with everybody else on our team. My ear, I heard at least three cases for 3 articles of impeachment or more.
Yes, I thought that, they talked about abuse of power, they talked about bribery, they talked about obstruction. But the thing that I thought about that exchange that the questioner missed was that she was giving credence to a statutory bribery charge. She wasn't asking for any leeway on a description of bribery in some constitutional sense. She spoke about official acts, which is one of the elements in bribery that the Supreme Court was concerned with. And the official acts that were spelled out during the Intelligence Committee hearings were, 1, you want a meeting. 2, you'd like this $391 million to defend your nation against Putin, my friend, in Russia. And I think that Trump had hoped that he'd never have to give them any money at all. But finally, because the whistle was blown on him literally, it was forced by Congress that the funds should go for the country. Now, the questions, I thought, sometimes drifted, but the professors were amazing, I thought.
Who did you think was strongest?
Well, I liked Feldman particularly, and I think it was because he was the first to speak, as I remember. And I thought he was so clear. And in other words, for the public, he was giving the building blocks in a way that was undeniable. And I thought that was powerful. I thought the references to the 1787 meetings of our founding fathers as to why impeachment and what it meant and what the debate was and why they decided they couldn't do without it, particularly within the shadow of why they had declared their independence from a king-ridden country.
I want to bring Danielle in on that, because it was the lofty part. I mentioned in our open here, there was all the partisan brawling. There was plenty of double speak, as people have seen these hearings before. But I would argue as an observer that there was loftier at times than a lot of other congressional hearings. The founders got a lot of things wrong. They were cabined and blinkered by their times. They made many mistakes. I wonder what you thought of, Daniela, the loftier part where the founders, they did know something that remains so true today. Everything's changed. Technology's changed. Our minds have changed. But absolute power abused within a democracy to hold on to more power unchecked can endanger democracy itself.
Yeah, some things withstand a test of time. And abuse of power and not acting like a king or a monarch, no matter what century you're in, I think it all plays out the same way. And I agree. I think laying that out at the beginning really set a good grounding for what these hearings are about. Because at the end of the day, this is not a happy process. This is not a good thing that this country is going through. It is a sad, sad moment for us that we are actually possibly on the verge of impeaching another president for asking a foreign government to interfere in our elections. And, I just have to say, I don't know which congresswoman played the tape of President Trump actually saying that he did the thing that we're accusing him of doing. But I'm glad that they did that, because it's almost as if the Republicans up there on that stage forgot that President Trump did this and that we heard him say these.
It is Thursday, the 5th of December of 2019, and you are in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. I am your chef de cuisine, Justice Putnam, and our daily special is Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. Impeachment is on the table, folks. That's right. It's quite spicy, I should warn you, but it has a lot of pizzazz. Oh my! Well, Nancy Pelosi, in a very sober statement, has instructed, I'll just say instructed, her chairmen, the plural was purposeful, to draft articles of impeachment against Donald J. Trump. And, but I got to tell you, we know where this is going, and we can surmise the outcome. The fast track on this we have to. The crime is being committed as we speak. More crimes. And, of course, Giuliani being in the Ukraine, plotting in the actual plot that they are being charged with, tells you all you need to know about what's going to happen in the Senate. Whenever a Republican says that the Democrats came in with their minds made up, it means the Republicans have made their minds up, because that's how you can tell they are a family. Kevin McCarthy, we need to remember this. We cannot forget this. Kevin McCarthy is on tape telling his caucus at a private dinner that there were two people paid by Vlad, Rohrabacher and Trump. And the audience began to titter, and he said, no, I'm serious. And then Paul Ryan stepped in and said, no, yes, we all know. But we need to keep this information among ourselves, because that is how you can tell we are a family. And he means with a capital F and mob in front of it. That's how you can tell that the GOP is a mob family. They took an oath of muerta. But no, it's we Democrats who are the ones who have made up their minds. We wanted to impeach Trump from day one. Well, I'm sorry, emoluments may not have been a very, it doesn't roll off the tongue as well as other things. Does it now? And since the vast numbers of Americans know very little about American civics now, by design, I might add, the GOP is hoping that their agitprop that they've been pushing on their own without any foreign help for decades, and now coupled with, well, let's just say a scientifically refined agitprop, with a little Cyrillian flair. Cyrillian? Yeah. I mean Cyrillic flair. Cyrillian's a color. Oh my. Blue, too. They are counting that people's lack of American civics and knowledge of, and all of their agitprop over decades, plus the agitprop that they're getting from Vlad is enough, they may be right. But when I hear felons like Dinesh D'Souza publicly proclaim, we are going to have a civil war, they are going to lose because we have all the guns, meaning all the right wing, I think that a gauntlet, a line in the sand, I think there is a throwdown right now, a threat. I would think that our great experiment is in peril. And we are hoping that the institutions are strong enough to withstand this erosion. It's been undermined for decades already. And there was one party doing that, using process to undermine the Constitution of the United States, to the point that we now have secret OLC memos that apparently have made the President of the United States a monarch. Or, let me put it this way, whenever a Republican is president. Because if by some devilish occurrence, obviously manipulated by the devil, a Democrat ever holds office, well, that's not legitimate. That person is no king. That person is no representative. That person is an outsider. They weren't even born here. So I would say that the Russian agitprop has helped mightily. But the agitprop that we've been getting from the right wing, and I will say even before Hillary and Bill, the vast right-wing conspiracy that Hillary had mentioned back in the day, and Hillary was pilloried for it. I remember sitting around thinking, well, yeah, we've only been seeing it since even before Watergate. Give me a break. And after Watergate, when the pardon came down, I knew the fix was in. And then we got Ronald Reagan. You know, he had run for president a few times and got kicked to the curb because the guy was an idiot and an extremist. And then he went through a period of sainthood, and now he's just an afterthought. Ronald Reagan? We don't want a principled person like Ronald Reagan. When they're rebelling against Ronald Reagan as being a principled Republican, you know we are in grave, grave danger. Enough of my rant, because we did have quite a long opening there with Ari, but I thought it was important. Because what is Giuliani doing over in the Ukraine? And we know Moscow Mitch, if it's Moscow Mitch, he will acquit. We already know the outcome of this, but this needs to be done. It is our civic duty. And if by some great possibility, some great chance that we're able to keep the election from being manipulated, even down to manipulating vote totals, if we can avoid that, and we can come out in vast numbers and vote, because they can only do any of that on the margins, once again, we can probably get a proper AG and track down these scofflaws and put them to court. What's on the rest of the menu here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy? Well, a Texas judge ordered a group to stop trying to build Trump's border wall near the butterfly sanctuary. Now, Trump wants to build his wall right through the butterfly sanctuary because who cares, right? It's just a bunch of butterflies. But that's been put on hold, and a group has tried to purchase plots of land so that they can build the border wall. And they actually collected a bunch of money, but there's more to that story, isn't there? And we'll get into it. Marco Rubio blocked Trump's interior nominee over offshore drilling. Well, Marco's not on board. He will be. Trust me. And Trump shock trooper Matt Gaetz yelled at Professor Karlan that what does she know? He's going to impeach Obama instead. Because Matt Gaetz has a law degree, but he also has more DUIs than law degrees. After the break, we move to the chef's table where Trump lawyer Jay Sekulow argued at the International Criminal Court they have no business involving themselves in an Afghan war crimes investigation. Wow. Talk about Western influence. Talk about manifest destiny. Talk about exceptionalism. And speaking of exceptionalism, North Korea warned the UN Security Council they better not even think about discussing the hermit kingdom's human rights violations. Don't you even think about it. All that and more on West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit. Did you know that at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, to the rightish of the page is our chat room link, deftly located by superior graphic design, right there by the social media scroll. Graphic design by Tom. Thank you, Tom. The chat room is monitored by Kelly Lincoln. Thank you, Kelly. And they both do much more than that. And we thank them tremendously. Thank you. If you would then look to the leftish from the chat room link at the bottom of our homepage at netrootsradio.com, you will then notice our link to our Patreon page. And if you could become a recurring Patreon of Netroots Radio, that helps us really pay our bills. And I'm still here. It's the end of the year. Software is not going to be supported on this old Dell that I have Windows 7 on. Yeah, Windows 7. Yikes. But we have been broadcasting 24/7, 365 for over 8 years now. So these machines, the MacBook and this little Dell that I do a lot of formatting on, well, they are workhorses, but they're going to need to be replaced. They were not new when we got them. They were newish to us, but they had been refurbished. And wow, have they worked for a long time. So we're going to have to replace them in order, I suppose. Software starts at the end of the month. Is going to be unsupported. So, wow, that sucks. Anyway, we thank you for your generosity. I should mention also, you can make a single donation, but you'll have to put it in a recurring format and then stop it. We went with Patreon rather than with PayPal for, well, political reasons. We put our support where, people want to do less harm. I'm not so sure Patreon fulfills that ethic so much anymore. Everybody changes. They just change. But right now they're the best for us. Maybe we should go to Square Cash. But we're trying to make it easy for folks. And PayPal had some issues that, we wanted to divest ourselves somewhat from. But you never can. You never can. So that's why we're on Patreon. But if you could become a recurring Patreon of any amount or time, that really helps us tremendously, and we thank you for your generosity. If you would like to follow Netroots Radio on Twitter, do so at Netroots Radio. Tom takes care of that. I told you he does more than what we just say, and even that, he does even more. Thank you, Tom. And You could follow me on Twitter at Justice Putnam. That's a pretty good place to follow me at. And I also post the show notes and links diary on Daily Kos. That's why it's a diary. It'd be a blog post anywhere else, but on Daily Kos, it's a diary. Historical, look it up. And that's where the show notes and links diary is for all the show notes and links, which then I post up about 10 minutes before showtime on social media for your social media linkage pleasure. Follow the show on Twitter at Cookbook West. And the most important part of all is pick up podcasts, not only for West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, but all our other shows too, that we produce here at Netroots Radio, of course, on either Spreaker, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeart, YouTube, iTunes, etc., 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 etc. All right. This first offering here in the Bistro Cafe, we better get on with this because between Ari's build-up at the top and then my going off, because I like to do that now, we've eaten up quite a bit of time. But let's get into these offerings here. More anonymous worker bees out of the Associated Press. Mostly they are. That's how they are, the Associated Press. Bring us this first offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. Oh, don't forget, a little bit of smoked hot Hungarian paprika will make all the difference in the world. It does. Well, a local judge in South Texas has ordered supporters of Donald Trump not to build their planned private border wall in a section of land near the Rio Grande. I'm going to have to change the introduction a little bit, just on the written part, because these are TrumpBros supporters. They're TrumpBros. State District Judge Kino Vasquez. Oh, this person can't make a judgment on the border wall. They're Mexican. You have to be pure. You have to be able to kiss the ass of Donald Trump to be able to criticize him, and you'll never criticize him because you're a Donald Trump ass kisser. Everybody else are, I don't know, subhuman. Mud people. We're all mud people. Well, fortunately, right now, in terms of our existence in the rule of law, Judge Kino Vasquez issued a temporary restraining order against We Build the Wall, which raised $25 million after promising to build its own private barrier. Vasquez set a December 17th hearing for We Build the Wall and its founder, Brian Kolfage, to appear in court in the South Texas city of Edinburgh. Wow. Scottish towns in Texas. We Build the Wall announced... Oh, I'm sorry. I have to go back and properly say its name. We Build the Wall announced on Facebook last month that it was starting construction on private land next to the Rio Grande, the river that separates the U.S. and Mexico and Texas, for those of you who are geographically challenged. You do know that war, conquest, and stealing people's property is God's way of teaching Americans geography. You know that, don't you? Well, it posted videos that showed a construction foreman describing plans to install posts a short distance from the riverbank. The announcement drew immediate criticism from the nonprofit National Butterfly Center, which is located near the site, and filed the motion for the temporary restraining order. While opponents who say private construction can worsen erosion or push floodwaters onto other people's property in a storm, but when you're a Trump bro, you don't care about other people. You want your gratification now, and everybody else be damned, because that's, well, how entitled you are. The Butterfly Center and the advocacy group Earth Justice, oh, no relation. I would like to be, though, issued a statement Wednesday calling We Build the Wall's plans illegal. The incredible biodiversity found here, supported and enhanced by 17 years of labor and millions of dollars of investment, is integral to the health of a fragile but vibrant ecosystem and warrants protection against this unlawful incursion, said Dr. Jeffrey Glassberg, president of the North American Butterfly Association. Well, obviously, that's a hoity-toity academic. Moms, if you don't let your cowboy babies grow up to be butterfly presidents. Well, the plan drew the attention of the International Boundary and Water Commission, an agency set up by the U.S. and Mexico under treaty obligations where both sides agree to cooperate on any changes to the riverbank that could affect the other side. Well, when you're a Trump bro, that's the whole point. I needed to add before I start here on this next offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy that I'm a little shocked at the TrumpBros defense. Well, I'm not so shocked. I mean, they're knee-jerk. We all know that. But this fervent defense over what they think is an insult to Barron, the Trump family, by invoking Barron's name, when every Trump bro I have ever talked to always referred to Barron as, what's his name. This next offering here in the Bistro Cafe is by Valerie Volkovici out of Reuters. Florida Republican Senator Marco Rubio has placed a hold on the Senate confirmation of Trump's pick to become the Deputy Secretary of the Interior Department over concerns about the agency's plans to expand offshore drilling. Really? Marco Rubio doesn't want offshore drilling? Of course not. When you have to live around it, it's no fun. What's funny is I was going through some old Joni Mitchell songs, and she talks about, like oil tar balls on the beach. I mean, it's in a rock song. It's hidden there. She sings it so lovely with her auto harp. Yeah, she played an auto harp. Different kind of rock instrument even then. But she wasn't talking about a Southern California beach either. Now, naturally occurring oil will float to the top from the ocean floor, but it's a lot worse when you have offshore drilling platforms. Just saying. Environmentalists and lawmakers of both parties have expressed concern that an oil spill could pose a risk to wildlife and beaches, hurting tourism and the fishing industries. I wonder where there's been an example of that recently, like during a hurricane. Well, not so recent now. It seems recent to me because I'm old. But, it's like a Macondo well blowout. They call it the Macondo well blowout. And then we hit like a hurricane and made it even worse. Thanks. Well, yeah, that would pretty much have an impact on wildlife, beaches, tourism, and the fishing industries, which usually means a couple of guys on a boat. Lots of them. When it comes to offshore drilling and exploration, the Florida delegation is united in opposition to allowing our shores to be subjected to new leases, Rubio spokesman Nick Iacovella told Reuters by email. Well, as one who was intimately involved in exploration and production of the oil industry, intimately, yeah. One of the old anecdotes from the old guys that have been working there for a while, I have to say, a lot of them were a lot more environmentally aware than we would ever give them credit for. And I didn't until I sat down and listened to them, and I realized, wow, these guys actually care. Well, sort of. I mean, they're still in the industry, but still. And I was, too. How dare I? Regardless, the anecdote was, We cannot guarantee no spills on land. How the hell can you guarantee one offshore? And yeah, the colorful language was part of the anecdote. David Badish of the New Civil Rights Movement brings us this final offering here in the Bistro Cafe of West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. Now, I refer to Matt Gaetz as a shock trooper. I had previously been referring to him as a brown shirt, you know, just a sort of like little embellishment to literally add color. But his position is more that of the old shock troops, because Jordan, I guess Collins now, a few others, they are to essentially yell and shock. Matt Gaetz, possibly the most devoted congressman to Donald Trump, concluded his questioning yesterday afternoon with a hot-headed retort, suggesting Barack Obama and not Donald Trump should be impeached. Really now? He has a law degree somehow. He does. And you know what? If wiretapping a political opponent's an impeachable offense, I look forward to the Inspector General's report, because maybe as a different president we should be impeaching, Gaetz charged. Well, you know, there was an IG report, you stupid idiot. And you know what it said? I know, you think it's just the deep state absolving the black guy who wasn't even born here who became president. So if a black guy who wasn't even born here became president, why not have a Russian mobbed-up asset in the Oval Office instead? Tit for tat. The Florida congressman apparently has not been keeping up with the news, because the IG's report will say President Obama did not wiretap then candidate Trump or Trump Tower. But you know what they did get him over? They were tapping other people. Tapping. You know what I mean. They had subpoenas to be able to do intel on Russian mobsters and other people. And suddenly there was an uptick of a lot of Trump campaign people having contacts with these mobsters. And Matt Gaetz, let's be clear, he's a rich boy Florida guy. He knows what property values mean in Florida, especially when you got a lot of laundered Russian rubles coming in, buying properties tens of millions over asking. So why not come in and shock by retroactively impeaching Obama? Yeah, Matt, like I said, they're counting on the American people not having enough American civics to be able to, tell this guy where to get off. Except he's being told where to get off. All right, let's get to our break, and when we get back from that break, we are going to go through weather from around the world, and we are going to finish up with the stories that we have curated for you today. You are listening to West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, and we will be right back.
You are listening to netrootsradio.com.
Please hang up and try again.
From a point at sea to the circles of your mind, a new force is at work for planetary transformation. New radio for a new Earth.
This is Scientific American 60-Second Science. I'm Aline Augenbraun.
Our microbiomes, the tiny organisms that live on us and in us, can influence our health. And a recent study looked at microbiome composition and diversity depending on where and how we live. Given the same latitude and climate across South America,
we found in a gradient of urbanization from jungle houses, huts of Amerindian people living traditional lifestyles, all the way to a modern city like Manaus, was differences in microbes from our houses and from our skin, and differences in exposure to chemicals.
Microbiologist Maria Gloria Dominguez-Bello from Rutgers University. She and her colleagues collected samples from people, pets, and spaces in homes, like the kitchen, bathroom, and bedrooms. They analyzed bacteria, fungi, parasites, and chemicals. And they found two trends as you go from the rainforest to a farm, to a town, to the city of Manaus. With increasing population density,
we are exposed to a higher diversity of fungi. We carry more diversity of fungi in our skin, but in our gut, we lose microbial diversity.
The study is in the journal Nature Microbiology. Urban homes use more chemical cleaners than do rural or rainforest homes, and they're more likely to be built out of synthetic materials. So city residents are burdened with more chemicals, including metabolites of cleaners, detergents, and paints, in and on their bodies. In addition, the microbes of urban dwellers are far more like each other than they are like the more healthful mix found in the rainforest. Dominguez-Bello thinks one reason is that we are too isolated from natural landscapes.
We have grown culturally very anti-dirt. We call dirt. We call the soil dirt, and that already has a connotation of undesirable.
Perhaps city living could be a bit healthier with fewer chemicals from cleansers and more microbes from what gets cleaned.
For Scientific American's 60-Second Science, I'm Aline Augenbraun.
Hi, it's Tom. Could we humbly suggest your donation to netrootsradio.com? All we've got to run this 24-hour powerhouse of progressive resistance radio is what comes out of our own wallets. And you are our biggest donor. And it doesn't take much, $3, $5. Just go to the bottom of our netrootsradio.com page and hit our secure donate button. Heck, you can even make a recurring contribution. And you'll get a wondiferous pair of Netroots radio stickers for application to your backpack, your bumper sticker, or your banjo. Well, it's up to you which backpack you want to put it on. So donate what you'd like at the bottom of our netrootsradio.com's homepage. Because you are our biggest donor. netrootsradio.com. Together, we are Resistance Radio.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1955. That was the day the American Federation of Labor and the Congress of Industrial Organizations merged to become the AFL-CIO. The American Federation of Labor was a confederation of unions that can trace its roots all the way back to just after the Civil War in 1866. Samuel Gompers initially established the Federation of Organized Trades and Labor Unions, which reorganized as the American Federation of Labor. This group was comprised of craft unions and represented primarily skilled laborers. However, as industrialization grew, many union organizers believed in the idea of industrial unions. They wanted to expand to organize more unskilled workers by industry. John L. Lewis, head of the United Mine Workers Union, was one union leader who wanted this change. Out of this idea, the Committee of Industrial Unions was formed as part of the American Federation of Labor. This group felt its issues were being ignored by the AFL. As a result, in 1938, it split from the AFL and became the Congress of Industrial Organizations. Members of the CIO included the United Mine Workers, the United Auto Workers, and the United Steel Workers. The 1950s were a high point for labor unions in the United States. 1/3 of all workers in the nation were members of unions. However, both the AFL and the CIO were concerned about the future of organized labor. The Taft-Hartley Act, passed in 1947 over the veto of President Harry S. Truman, made organizing more difficult. The two groups realized they would be more effective if they banded together under one roof. The American Federation of Labor and the Congress of Industrial Organizations merged to become today's AFL-CIO.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
I read the news today, oh boy.
It's time for Nicole Sandler's What's News from NicoleSandler.com and the Progressive Voices Network.
The House Judiciary Committee held its first impeachment hearing on Wednesday. 3 legal experts told the panel that President Trump's alleged effort to pressure Ukraine to investigate political rivals amounted to a clearly impeachable abuse of power. That's Michael Gerhardt, a professor at the University of North Carolina, who continued saying, "This is precisely the misconduct that the framers created the Constitution, including impeachment, to protect against." A fourth witness who was called by Republicans, George Washington University law professor Jonathan Turley, said Democrats were, quote, lowering impeachment standards to fit a paucity of evidence and an abundance of anger, raising the risk that future presidents could be ousted unfairly. The hearings took a strange turn after Professor Pamela Karlan of Stanford used Barron Trump's name to make a point. Here's the original question from Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee and Professor Karlan's response.
What comparisons, Professor Karlan, can we make between kings that the framers were afraid of and the president's conduct today?
So kings could do no wrong because the king's word was law. And contrary to what President Trump has said, Article 2 does not give him the power to do anything he wants. And I'll just give you one example that shows you the difference between him and a king, which is the Constitution says there can be no titles of nobility. So while the president can name his son Baron, he can't make him a baron.
Thank you. The founding father.
I heard nothing wrong there, but it was sometime later during the hearing when one of the Republicans read a tweet from Melania Trump to be entered into the record.
I seek unanimous consent to enter into a record a tweet that the First Lady of the United States just issued within the hour that says, quote, "A minor child deserves privacy and should be kept out of politics. Pamela Karlan, you should be ashamed of your very angry and obviously biased public pandering and using a child to do it," unquote.
Without objection, the document will be entered into the record.
Well, the next time Professor Karlan had the mic, she apologized. Although I think Melania went overboard in the ugliness of her response and that no apology was necessary. But Karlan did get in an important point aimed directly at the would-be monarch.
I want to apologize for what I said earlier about the president's son. It was wrong of me to do that. I wish the president would apologize, obviously, for the things that he's done that's wrong, but I do regret having said that.
Nancy Pelosi took to the microphones Thursday morning to deliver an update on the status of the House of Representatives impeachment inquiry and has now officially said that the House will move on to writing articles of impeachment.
Our democracy is what is at stake. The president leaves us no choice but to act because he is trying to corrupt, once again, the election for his own benefit. The president has engaged in abuse of power, undermining our national security and jeopardizing the integrity of our elections. His actions are in defiance of the vision of our founders and the oath of office that he takes to preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. Sadly, but with confidence and humility, with allegiance to our founders, and a heart full of love for America, today I am asking our chairman to proceed with articles of impeachment. I commend our committee chairs and our members for their somber approach to actions which the president had not made necessary. In signing the Declaration of Independence, our founders invoked a firm reliance on divine providence. Democrats, too, are prayerful and we will proceed in a manner worthy of our oath of office to support and defend the Constitution of the United States from all enemies, foreign and domestic. So help us God. Thank you.
House Democrats have reportedly been told to stay in town this weekend for prep. Donald Trump is back at the White House after abruptly canceling a news conference at the end of the NATO summit in London on Wednesday. The move came after video surfaced apparently showing Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau, French President Emmanuel Macron, and even British Prime Minister Boris Johnson, and a few others, laughing about Trump's sometimes unexpected comments in news conferences and more. In the video, you can hear Trudeau say, "I just watched his team's jaw drop to the floor." Trump was asked about the video and called Trudeau two-faced.
Did you have a video of Prime Minister Trudeau talking about you last night?
Well, he's two-faced.
Do you think that Germany's too naive?
And honestly, with Trudeau, he's a nice guy. I find him to be a very nice guy. But, you know, the truth is that I called him out on the fact that he's not paying 2%. And I guess he's not very happy about it.
And then he took his toys and went home. No surprise there. Hey, just in time for the holidays, the Trump administration on Wednesday announced plans for a rule tightening work requirements for people who receive food stamps. The move will make it harder for states to keep people in the supplemental nutrition program known as SNAP, potentially cutting benefits to 688,000 recipients. Unbelievable. So the president, who screwed over our allies, the Kurds, by announcing a unilateral withdrawal of U.S. troops from northeastern Syria, proclaiming he was going to end those endless wars, is now weighing the idea of expanding the U.S. military presence in the Middle East with more than 14,000 more troops and dozens of ships. It's all about the oil, apparently. And finally, Florida man is back. George Zimmerman, who in 2013 was somehow acquitted of charges in the fatal shooting of Trayvon Martin, is suing Martin's family and others for $100 million. Martin's mother, Sabrina Fulton, is the lead defendant in Zimmerman's lawsuit, which reportedly accuses the Martin family of engineering false testimony and seeks $100 million in damages. Attorney Benjamin Crump, in a statement, described the lawsuit as reckless. You think? And that's just a bit of what's news for now. I'm Nicole Sandler. If you appreciate these reports and the Nicole Sandler Show, I hope you'll consider making a contribution. My work is 100% listener-supported, and I can't do it without your help. Find out more at NicoleSandler.com/donate.
Thank you for accompanying us here to the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy, Metro Shrimp and Grits Thursdays. A little bit of jambalaya, a little bit of spice in your life. We always begin, whether from around the world, along the banks of the Rogue River, in the Rogue River Valley of Southern Oregon on the west coast of the continental United States of America, where it is currently 37 degrees Fahrenheit. We're expected to be a tad warmer than yesterday. We barely hit 46, though we are expected to have a high of 54 or a bit warmer today. We are currently under a dense fog advisory, and cloudy conditions will prevail throughout the day. Winds currently are light and variable, though will pick up coming out of the east at 5 to 10 miles per hour, continuing at that clip overnight, though they will shift out of the east-southeast. Partly cloudy early tonight with increasing clouds overnight, and then rain beginning tomorrow, about a third of an inch. And then over the weekend, about a third to a quarter of an inch over the weekend each day. Not for the cumulative amount, but for each day. So we'll see about that. It is that time of year, as we would normally have our weather patterns. Everything is subject to change, of course. And let's see. Okay, well, this is something. The pollen is rated at none. But the air quality index, and I think this is because we're socked in with this fog, it is in the unhealthy range for sensitive groups at 104 parts per million. Wow. The daytime UV index, though, is low at 1 because of that fog. Barometric pressure is falling at 30.02 inches. Visibility is down to 4 miles. And relative humidity is at 100%. Weather from around the world is brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchase. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. London is 48 and partly cloudy. Paris is 34 and cloudy. Rome is 55 and sunny. Kyiv is 38 and fair. Kabul is 43 with smoke. I bet their air quality is really bad too. Hong Kong is 60 degrees and fair. Tokyo is 48 and mostly cloudy. Sydney, Australia is 68 and mostly cloudy. San Francisco, California is 52 and mostly cloudy with their own fog advisory. And New York is 40 degrees Fahrenheit and mostly cloudy. And that is weather from around the world, brought to you by people's personal weather stations that they purchased. These people planted these purchased personal weather stations somewhere on their property, and these people positively live around the world. Stephanie Vandenberg of Reuters brings us this first amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. A lawyer for Donald Trump argued at the International Criminal Court that prosecutors were wrong to seek an investigation into alleged war crimes in Afghanistan, which he said specifically targeted U.S. soldiers. ICC judges in April rejected the request of prosecutor Fatou Bensouda to examine atrocities allegedly committed between 2003 and 2014, including mass killings of civilians by the Taliban, as well as prisoner torture by Afghan authorities, and to a lesser extent by U.S. forces and the CIA. She is appealing against that decision. Trump lawyer Jay Sekulow, speaking as a friend of the court in the case, told judges that they should not allow the prosecutor to open a case that targeted American troops when the United States is not a member of the court. Well, I would say in the rule of law, it doesn't matter whether you accept the court or not, Al Capone.
Je te donne c'est mon amour pour la vie entière. La promesse de me trouver à tes genoux. Aussitôt que tu m'appelles, rester toujours fidèle. C'est tout, c'est tout. Je te donne tous mes printemps, mes étés de mer. Mes automnes, quand les feuilles tombent partout. Si ce n'est pas une bonne affaire, je te donne tous mes hivers, c'est tout.
Michelle Nichols of Reuters brings us this final amuse-bouche here at the chef's table at West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. North Korea told the United Nations Security Council that it would consider any discussion of the country's human rights situation as a serious provocation, and that they would respond strongly. Would you now? North Korea's UN ambassador Kim Song delivered the warning in a letter which was seen by Reuters. Diplomats said several members of the 15-member council plan to request a meeting this month on human rights abuses in North Korea. The United States is president of the Security Council for December, so no wonder they're going at each other. Maybe they'll have a resort built and make everything hunky-dory with no malarkey whatsoever. Well, that brings us to the end of our broadcast period for the day. But you do know that Netroots Radio is going to broadcast on for impeachment. Yay! And so we'll meet up tomorrow for Blue Moon Spirits Fridays to sort of celebrate. So do stay tuned to Netroots Radio all day and all night for all the breaking news as it breaks. And we'll meet up here tomorrow, right here in West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy. Bon appetit.
Je voudrais du soleil vert, des dentelles et des théâtres, des photos de bord de mer, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je voudrais de la lumière, comme en Nouvelle-Angleterre. Je veux changer d'atmosphère, dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ma fleur sous la pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, qu'il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Je voudrais du Fred Astaire, revoir un latte Goël. Je voudrais toujours te plaire dans mon jardin d'hiver. Je veux déjeuner par terre, comme au long de golfe clair. T'embrasser les yeux ouverts dans mon jardin d'hiver. Pluie de novembre, tes mains qui courent, je n'en peux plus de t'attendre. Les années passent, il est loin, là je tombe. Nul ne peut nous entendre. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Ba-da-da-dum-di-da-dum. 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 Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver. Dans mon jardin d'hiver.